Disclaimer. I am a law student, and the legal information provided is not legal advice. For that, please hire an attorney. Hi. Whoop. Hi. Let's begin with a hypothetical. Let's say that you're a YouTuber and a Twitch streamer. And let's say that you put out a video about Kyle Rittenhouse. And let's say that someone else watches that video who's also a Twitch streamer and creator. And let's say that this other Twitch streamer asks the first Twitch streamer, you, to go onto their stream. And let's say that this isn't a hypothetical, this is what's happening. Question. Are you, the initial Twitch streamer YouTuber, are you funny for doing this bit? Hey everyone. Hypothetical Twitch streamers. Hold on, I gotta adjust this. Because I usually... is that... Nope, a little bit more. And is that better? Not a little bit more. There we go, that's good. Yeah, hey everyone. Let's say for the sake of argument. Yeah, I know, right? All right, yeah, so this is completely unprompted. I wasn't originally planning on doing this because I'm busy as fuck this week. Only number didn't work though. Oh wait, I shortened it. Okay, so I'm gonna be calling Lance. Let's see. Pending. Hold on. Let me just double check, because I'm trying to add Lance on here. Let's see. Oh wait, shortened it. Let's see. We're gonna make this work, fam. Listen, go easier on me. I don't have like prepared content necessarily. Yeah, all of you are valid. All of you are great. Serfs punch, serfs and punchers. Yeah, I checked my Twitter. Hold on. We're gonna figure this out, damn it. But I can't really do it on my computer at the moment because I don't know. I use my Discord, right? So I have to just be a little conscientious. Let's see. Incoming friend request. Hold on. Let's go. We're gonna go invade the Serfs. We're invading the Serfs here. I'm in their waiting room. They can bring me in if they so choose. So how are y'all doing? Invading. Yeah, absolutely. I call dibs on their couch. Yeah, no, we're going in and we're taking, we're going in and we're robbing and pillaging and all that good stuff. All right, hold on. They're messaging me. Accept my friend request so I can make the call. What friend request? Right, Genesis? Oh wait, see all. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. So they should be calling in a second. And yeah, Discord is weird. Okay, chill. Oh, let me pull up because, all right, so the TLDR is that we're going to be talking about, yeah, Kyle, because that seems to be the hot button subject. I'm pretty much planning on my next stream is going to be like dedicated to Kyle, or rather, thank you, I really appreciate it. Or rather specifically, all of the responses to Kyle, because holy shit, there's so many fucking like reactionary or like crazy takes on Kyle, right? But I feel like I have to talk about it. So Also with that, I'm gonna try and do like gaming streams more often. I'm gonna try and play ESO more because I do enjoy it. I miss it, and I initially tried to not do that because it had like I enjoy the game a lot to the point where it ends up like being a distraction to me. But like with the world going to shit right now, I need nice things in my life. But thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it, and also I'm just a sucker for compliments. Wonder if Riley will play Animal Crossing. Probably not. Listen, I don't really play that many games. I am a person. I'm a gal that plays like one game and just like gets super into it at any given time, which might mean that we put Witcher on hold for a bit. I have to still figure that out. I ordered a controller, so I might bring that in. But I like multiplayer games. Oh. Hello? Wait a second. Turn on camera. Oh, wait a second. Let's see. Get that. There we go. Also have to make some changes here. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. There we go.
We did the thing.
We did do the thing. Also, oh my god, I fucked something up really bad. Hold on. What have I done? My camera.
Oh no.
I know. No. It was
so perfect before.
I know. I have no idea what's going on right now, but it'll whatever. People can watch this.
You're back on my screen.
Yeah. No, I have another camera, and it just looks really wonky. But whatever,
I'm looking at your stream. I'm going to show my stream your stream right now.
Yeah, I mean, like,
you look like you're in some kind of. It looks like David Lynch. This is awesome.
I know. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna roll with it. You know, like, hey, why not? You know, we're just we just kind of go with the flow, right? Yeah. But how are you doing?
It's a lefty stream. It's gonna have a whole bunch of scuffs. It's just part of the
experience. Yeah. No, I totally get it. How are you doing?
Good. This is the first time I think we've spoken one-on-one.
Yeah, actually, no, I think that you're right, because the last time that we spoke, it was on the fundraising stream, right?
Yes, thank you so much for helping, by the way. That was
yeah. No problem. And I mean, that was absolutely amazing, right? Like, how much did you end up raising by the end of it?
If we include the quarterings donation, 45,000, just over. Yeah.
Holy crap. That is wow. Yeah, I really can't say anything beyond that. I mean, like, I'm always thinking about fundraising. I'm helping fundraise for an event that we're going to be doing pretty soon here over the nonprofit that I serve on the board for, right over here in Maryland. And yeah, awesome. Like 45. Yeah, so 45 grand is absolutely that's amazing. So yeah, no.
Let me know the details. I'd love to help out in any way I can.
Yeah, I've just been, I mean, like, I have it pinned. So for people who are watching, if you go to my Twitter it's just at Riley G Rochong. It's my pinned tweet, has like basically all the abridged information about it. It's just, I mean, I don't know. It's a different kind of fundraiser than kind of what you did, right? It's something where you pay tickets to go to an event. But obviously if there are people who are able to, then, any help would be appreciated. But yeah, I mean, like, we don't have to get too caught up in the weeds about that. That's not, I assume, why you brought me on.
Well, we can have some pleasantries. We can do some of the, like, how is life? Congrats on your success. I see your channel's blowing up. I hope you're not getting the temptation. I think you'll get the temptation maybe at around 18,000, which you'll hit really fast. But you'll probably get that temptation and be like, do I need to finish law school and become a super?
Oh fuck! No. Listen. The temptations have already not that I will finish law school, but definitely the temptations to figure out like how far I want to take this. Those are certainly quite real, right? Because I mean, like, now I'm starting to, like, this is starting to be a little more weighty, right? Like, now I'm actually getting like enough income that I can't say that this is just a hobby, right? Like, I have to take this seriously to the extent that, people like actually financially support me, right? And I love that, like, I'm literally being paid to do things that, something that did start out as a hobby, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And I love that, there are people who find enough value that apparently they're willing to pay me, which I think is a pretty bad move, all things considered. But hey, I'm not going to argue with them. And thank you.
You're like, and hey, I'll say this: you're putting in the work because I was rifling for the last 3 days to find all the information I can on the shooting, right, and the
Hmm.
entire saga surrounding Kyle Rittenhouse. And I'm not a good armchair detective. I'm a good armchair a lot of things. I'm a good an armchair sociologist. I'm a half decent armchair like bird lawyer, and I'm a little bit of an armchair comedian. But like I cannot armchair detective very well. So like when I try to do these things, I'll have to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to see like, did I watch the video clip enough times? Have I made all the notes? Have I done all this? Right. So it was so refreshing that you had done way more work than me and just laid it all out in terms of legal framework. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. And I will actually have to say here, because I definitely could not have done that without the help of my Discord. And that's
Mhm.
honestly, out of the entirety of what I've done with my channel, probably the thing that I am most proud of, most happy with, right? Because like obviously being able to put out videos that can influence communication or like a discussion in the larger sort of leftist community is great and all. But like I don't know. I feel like I've been able to interact a lot with the people who are in my Discord, in my community, and like I've been able to rely on them as a resource. Because when I was getting ready to cover that, I basically said ahead of time, like, "Hey, I'm going to be covering X, Y, and Z subjects. Could people, do some preliminary research for me?" And actually, it's able, yeah, like I've been able to get a lot done with that, right? So I'm not constantly doing all the work by myself. So,
That's
um,
really nice.
yeah. So
You've already got a little team of like GGs. You've got your own GGs.
hey, yeah, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, no, they're I definitely I really appreciate their help. But yeah, no, I mean I whenever I cover something as intensive like this, especially when with the way that my education has gone, right? I just feel very uncomfortable. Um how do I want to say it? I hear people when they talk about wanting to shy away from covering breaking news, right?
Yeah.
Because like it is often a very tenuous kind of a thing, because basically whatever conclusions you make implicitly or either explicitly or implicitly come with the caveat that like, and this may change depending on what facts become available after the fact, right?
Hmm.
So I did, try to wait, and I'm glad that usually like I'll plan out about a week in advance what I want to cover so that I can at least do a decent amount of research on it before the stream. I know that there's a lot of people who just like to do like, sort of React Andy stuff. And I mean, like some of the stuff that I do is just React Andy, right? Or
Hmm.
I guess React Andrea. But definitely with this, I felt like the primary issue is that there's so much misinformation, so many different narratives or whatnot going around. Did he act in self-defense? Did he not? Like when my first major exposure to this was actually watching the Vosh Destiny debate. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you are familiar with that. And
I've seen it. I joked that I was bringing you on just to talk shit about it, so you don't have to actually
oh
jump
fuck,
into the drama sphere. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've got a lot of hate watchers today, so you might get clipped. So
oh
do
really?
watch what you say. Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh
You'll end up
wonderful.
on the internet in like 10 minutes.
Oh amazing.
Yeah.
I mean I expect everything should be fine. I mean, I don't really have a personal dog in that fight, right? Like I'm just coming in, just trying to be as much as I'm able to. I understand that I'm going to have some biases that are going to affect my analysis, as is the same with any legal professional. But like in this kind of an instance, I mean, I'm just trying to come in and be as, you know, try to be as objective and as educational as I can be. I'm not trying to be really prescriptive, right? Because a lot of the narratives I'm hearing people throw around are I think people want this kind of a case or want the outcome to go. And
Hmm.
that can be good and all to get opinion pieces, but I also just kind of want to, I suppose, provide like the baseline for giving people like the realistic understanding for like how probable it is if this were to go to trial, at least based on my experience and what I know, whether or
Hmm.
not Kyle would get charged, what he would get charged for, what defenses he could bring, how successful those could be, right? Because those are the questions that are on my mind, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean,
Can I
yeah.
quickly ask you what kind of law are you trying to get into? Because you said you were really good in criminal law, and I totally believe that. Is that the field that you want to enter?
So, I mean, I'm still figuring this out, right? I did exceptionally
Hmm.
well in my criminal law class during my first year, and that was actually the thing that got me my internship this past summer. Well, I mean, my clerkship for the organized crime division at the Maryland Attorney General's office, which is the highest criminal prosecutor's office in the state of Maryland, right? So, I mean, like I've done pretty well with criminal law. Like it there's a distinction, I'll say, whether or not someone enjoys a particular field of law and whether or not someone just kind of gets it intuitively. Like every field of law kind of comes with a different way of thinking about it, right? Like criminal law and to an extent like business and contract law function very differently from like tort law or civil procedure, right? Like they're all just very different animals, right? Criminal law has the nicety of being very black and white, straightforward. You have a number of elements, and you have to meet elements X, 1, 2, and 3 in the mens rea. And if you do, then you charge the person, and if not, then you don't, or you send it to trial or whatever. Like it's very clear cut in a lot of ways, right? In a way that other areas of the law, like tort law is basically how good can you argue a side will usually determine who wins in a trial, right? Which is why tort lawyers make probably some of the most money out of any of the private practices of law. Like if you went to law school with the explicit purpose of trying to make as much money as possible, the recommendation is either to go into corporate law or tort law, right? One of those two, and you will sell your soul to Satan, but you'll make a lot of money, right? Well. So yeah, but
that's usually the way.
Yeah, but bringing it back into me, right? Do I want to go into criminal law? Probably not. Since I had the opportunity to do that clerkship this past summer, I mean, it's interesting work, and I'm glad that I got the experience. Like the reason that I probably was interested in it, as a field of study to begin with, was because my mom was a chief prosecutor for a while, and so I learned a lot from her as I was growing up, right? And so I'm glad that I got the experience because now I can kind of relate to her. But I feel myself definitely going more towards, like for me, there were two kinds of work I did at the AG's office this summer. So I did work with the organized crime division. That was like criminal law work. But I also did work with them with the civil rights division on, and I can't say too much because it's still a hot issue, but relating to police brutality and policy that they're going to be pushing in the next Maryland legislative session. And that's something that's really up. Yeah. And that's something that's really up my alley because I mean, like, that influences law that could possibly be passed, and I don't know. It's just it has that element of politics. You have to have some skills like being able to communicate with people and talk, like a lot of the same skills that that a lot of people on the internet, honestly, like a lot of the same skills that people have on this platform can actually carry over very well to that sort of a job because you have to be able to persuade everyone in the room that not only is what you're pushing the right thing to push, but that that people have a compelling interest to support it, right? And that requires just rhetoric skills that law school doesn't really teach you, which is a big reason why I do what I do on here, because I like talking to people, and it hopefully is helping me prepare if I want to go into that sort of work. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but please stop me at any point.
It's fascinating though. I really got a sense for that when I was watching that video because it was like she was deeply involved in the rhetorical analysis of this entire scenario. What was your first take when you had seen everything that got down? I guess because the biggest question is we are trying to piece together what happened based on some blurry footage, and then I guess as new evidence comes out, which is the police report. Which did you have that? You had that at the time of making your video, right?
Yeah, so I was able to look at all the available evidence at the time. So I believe that at the time that the reports I relied on came out, that there had already been some charging documents. I had taken a look at those, and it was in one of the documents where I believe it was stipulated that, for example, that the bottle, the fabled bottle that was thrown at Kyle, was I believe that they stipulated that it was actually a plastic bottle in a bag, based on other evidence that had
the official police report just says plastic bag.
Oh, okay. Oh, just plastic bag. Okay,
yeah,
wonderful, amazing.
Bag, yeah.
Yeah. So, there are some interesting things like that. But as far as like the analysis, I mean, like a lot of my take was sort of focusing on the police footage because that's probably, or not the police footage, the footage that's been circulating online because that's if this goes to trial, it's almost certainly going to come up, because. Basically, my take when I looked at it first, and in the very abridged sense, was if this goes to trial, it's probably a coin flip on which way it's going to go over, right? Which is the answer that a lot of people don't want to hear necessarily, but that's why I went as in depth as I did because I wanted to explain exactly why and what arguments would determine whether or not Kyle, in my opinion, was going to get charged with certain things, right? So, for example. It everyone's talking about self-defense, right? Like self-defense is the the term that's circulating with Kyle. Like, essentially, the question is, was he acting in self-defense when he
I'll
shot?
be honest, I that hadn't entered my mind until
Oh,
that
really?
Vosh/Destiny debate. Well, of course, because whether or not he was justified in self-defending himself was not something that I was really like. I really want to wrap my head around the moral quandary that is the
Mhm.
scenario. Like that wasn't something that I was concerned with. What I was concerned with is
Okay.
like to me, this is more of a bigger picture thing. Like these are the opening salvos and what seems to be quite a violent clash between groups in the United States. And every single time this becomes exacerbated, we have him in this instance, Portland the next day or 2 days later, a shooting from the other direction, and then Trump dousing the whole thing with gasoline. Like the whole that was kind of my perspective on them. And now I've become like everyone else, hyper focused on just this because I didn't know that he would become kind of like the focal point of this entire movement or debate,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that. So that's why in my video I made a pretty clear distinction that between what I thought was the moral and legal arguments. Because I do think, like, at least from where I'm coming at this from, after I go through sort of like the legal arguments, the moral argument becomes a lot easier for me, right? Because so it's important to acknowledge a couple things, right, in terms of like how criminal law kind of goes over with charges, right? So like basically an abridged version of what I said was that you start with, okay, what could you possibly charge him? And by that meaning, like, if you were to choose specific charges to bring in a case against him, what material elements could be met, right? In this case, I know that under, let me see if I can remember it specifically, it was first degree intentional homicide, is I think one of the most serious charges that was brought against him. And if I can remember the claim correctly, I mean, I know that, so common law murder is unlawful killing of another with malice aforethought. It's something very similar to that, right? And I talked about it specifically in the video, but essentially when I went through it, just looking at the elements, right? Like disregarding whether or not he acted in self-defense at this point of the analysis, I think it's a pretty likely chance that if this goes to trial, that they'll be able to satisfy the elements pretty handedly. And so what the trial will
But
turn on.
can he not be tried as a child for all this? Because like, if that is the
Oh.
age, I'm totally on board with that. Because it doesn't matter what he did to me. If you're a child, you're a child. Under the law, you should be treated as one.
Yeah, no, I mean, like that's going to depend on what specific Wisconsin law is. I haven't taken child law or juvie law, so that's going to probably change the analysis. That that could certainly be possible. But I don't want to comment too much on that because it's outside of what I have studied, and right now I'm strictly coming in just like talking about things that I have learned myself, right? But yeah, there's a possibility that'll change the analysis, though. Seeing what they charged him, like seeing what the I believe it was the Wisconsin DA charged him with, it doesn't seem like it affects really the charging, right? It might affect the sentencing, but again, that's just based off the fact that, like, I know that the Wisconsin DA charged him with, I think it was a first degree intentional homicide, first degree reckless homicide, illegal carry or illegal use of a firearm, and there were several other different charges along those lines, right? So it doesn't seem like it would affect, just based on that information, that it would affect what he is charged with, but rather probably what he would get sentenced for, right? And mind you, like what you charge someone is entirely different from like the charging and trial stages of the criminal process are very distinct and separated from the sentencing process, right? Sentencing is after the jury or the judge has already decided the case on the merits and basically decides based on a totality of factors, which will vary widely from state to state about how to charge a person. So it probably is different at that point.
So this is going to be such a, like, I'm about to cast aspersions here, but what do you think happened before the footage? Like, I know the first shot is heard, and then Kyle appears to shoot someone else directly afterwards, whether or not that person was attacking him or charging at him, but he hears a shot that provokes him, I guess. He then shoots the first victim, and then that's where he, like, picks up the phone. He's like, I killed someone. And then, having seen him shoot someone, more people start to chase after him, right? It's kind of the order of events that I gathered.
That is, so I mean, like, and again, like, this will be something which is decided. I don't know if this is something that's been stipulated to or if it's an agreed fact, right? The footage seems to indicate that, at least as analyzed by, I believe it was like USA Today or the New York Times. One of them went through the footage and basically indicated where Kyle and another person had discharged their firearm in that parking lot, right? And the footage seems to pretty clearly show that Kyle had shot the other person. I don't know if they're just going to stipulate to that fact and acknowledge and try to make an argument of basically a justification argument, right? So,
well, when I read the police report, that seemed to be one of the first like instigating cause. They were like, a shot is heard first before, and then Kyle discharges his firearm afterwards. But whether or not that person he was firing at is either someone who was shooting or someone, I don't even think he was armed, right? It was found that he was unarmed afterwards.
I believe so, but I would have to defer to other more accurate accounts. But the thing about this, right? The thing that's going to that does make, like, one of the elements that makes this a little messy is that some of the arguments in Kyle's favor are drawing a distinction between this event and the latter event, or they're saying it depends on how you're construing the facts, right? If you decide that the parking lot instance is distinct and separate from the other one on the street, then you could get a really different kind of analysis, right? So, like with the first one, I'm just thinking out. I'm just thinking through, right? Course, so if you like, I could see a universe where an argument is made where Kyle first shoots someone without provocation, right? And that would not be an instance of self-defense. And then because the other people who then started chasing him because of that event, because then they tried to disarm Kyle, there could be a counter argument to an affirmative defense of self-defense. I talked about this a little bit in my video where, like, when you are, even if you're able to otherwise meet the requirements for a self-defense claim, which usually goes to whether or not you reasonably believed that you had to use deadly force in order to prevent the infliction of death or grievous bodily harm onto yourself or another. That's usually basically how you have to meet it. Under Wisconsin law, it appears that there is an exception to that, where if you are bringing about those, if you contributed to bringing about those circumstances by committing an unlawful act, which itself would cause other people to do the potentially dangerous or harmful thing to you, then you also have to prove that there was absolutely no other option available to you than to use deadly force, right? So does
that come down to, like, in the heat of the moment? I imagine people, like, you can't really make the argument that someone's going to have the time to, I'm going to now ascertain whether or not you pose a threat to my immediate, like, body, like, it's kind of like, oh shit, he's about to attack me, shoot,
Right. No, and that's why this is why the importance of sort of like the reasonableness standard comes into play, right? And again, this is the reason why I'm very clear that this is where the legal argument probably vastly is different from the moral argument, or at least to an extent, right? Because in the legal argument, it just looks at not whether or not he knew whether or not the other people had a deadly weapon or were going to kill him. It doesn't really, like, the law doesn't really care about whether or not he knew for sure what was going to happen to him, but rather, like, what a reasonable person acting in sort of the heat of the moment, like what you said, would think that based on what they observed, that they either were going to get killed or were going to suffer grievous bodily injury. And that's where, when you look at the footage, it's hard to tell, right? And it will likely be, and again, this is the answer that people don't like hearing, but it probably will be determined at trial, right? This is, so there's a couple kinds of, like, legal fiction, and one of them, like, one kind of legal fiction that we just kind of have to concede is true, or else the entire, like, legal court system falls apart, is the idea that if you put 12 or 13 jury members who are supposed to be representative of, like, the average person in society in a jury, and you have them, like, if you give them all the facts, that what they decide is a fact based on what they are presented with is just assumed to be true, right? Or it's supposed to be true. So if a jury were to find that Kyle Rittenhouse had a reasonable belief that he needed to use deadly force in order to prevent the grievous bodily injury or death of himself or another person, and that he had exhausted absolutely every other available alternative, then they might very well acquit him, right? And then it would be and then it'll be very, very hard to get that reversed, because oh, this goes back to like different standards of review, right? Like if you appeal to an upper court, generally speaking, to abridge it, issues of law, like how a court may apply law to particular facts, those are usually the things that are given the most review. That's called like de novo review, where a court basically reviews it as if the first case didn't happen at all, right? Because judges and lawyers, or at least appellate judges, are supposed to know the law better than trial court judges. Again, whether or not you believe that, that's what the law assumes,
that's
right?
the system in place. Yeah, we have the same system in Canada.
Yeah. But comparatively, let's see. I looked this up before I came on here a little bit earlier.
You did research?
Just a little bit, just because I figured that this would come up. But comparatively, when we're talking about issues of fact, and this would probably be an issue of fact, then the standard of review would be clearly erroneous, right? Which is basically that, like, an appellate court is not going to overturn what a lower court finds as fact unless it's, like, clearly erroneous. Like, unless, like, let's say, for example, that Kyle showed up there, and literally all the protesters were having a happy campfire, just sitting around and literally singing Kumbaya, and he just started like mowing into them. And then the lower court found that he was acting in self-defense. There, you might actually have a claim that like, okay, the trial court was clearly high on something. There's no way that this could actually. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. But no, so like in this instance, if a trial court were to find that he had that he met all the requirements for using self-defense, that he specifically that he had a reasonable impression that he needed to use deadly force, and that he had absolutely no other alternative, then for the large part, we're probably stuck with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Can I quickly ask you, and this gets a little bit, I know we're avoiding doing the moralistic argument, but I'm sorry, I'll have to pick your brain on that as we get closer to the second half. Okay. Mm-hmm. The idea of someone, maybe this is like kind of far removed from me, but the idea of someone defending property, and I know it's only like a 12 or 13 minute drive or whatever from where he was. So, the idea of the state line, a lot of people are like, well, that's very blurry because it's very close to where he is. But the idea of protecting the property under the penalty of death or murdering other human beings for stuff that you don't actually own, because that in your video is something weird to learn, that there's laws for that, protecting the third person's property. But again, it's a third person property whose property you don't even know, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it was pretty far removed. Like, I don't know if you've already seen the hilarious arguments being made by the other lawyer from the other direction.
I mean, like, I've heard some arguments. Like, I've seen the video footage of him.
No, the official statement from the lawyer. His lawyers put out a statement.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's amazing. Oh, God, it's great. Okay, so Kyle was a good old boy who, with his friends, after a day of whatever they were doing, were washing graffiti in their local area. Not in Kenosha. They were washing it over in their hometown. Mm-hmm. And then they received a phone call, a beacon, if you will, from the owner of a gas station asking if someone could come help them protect their property. So
can I just pause you for a second? This is like, is this an actual statement than an actual lawyer?
But yes, 100%. Oh, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you right now. This is the official statement from their lawyer, by the way. I know. That's why I was like, is anyone taking this seriously? Yeah, I know.
All right.
I know. Yeah, no, I'll link it. It's amazing. So anyways, him and his buddy get in the car. They drive across state line where their gun is waiting for them. So you see, the firearm was not transported over state lines. It was actually waiting for them in Minneapolis. So they picked it up there, and then they went about their way and went on their quest. So
I mean, unless there's some weird wonky Wisconsin state law, like, he was not allowed to, like, the law is pretty clear, right? Unlawful use of a firearm, right? Like, if he used it and had it, and which he pretty clearly did in Wisconsin, and he was under the age of 18, that's a class that's it. Like, again, you can disclaimer, I'm a law student, ask an attorney, all that, yada yada. But like, a plain reading of the law seems to indicate that he was not acting lawfully, right? At least in that regard. And that actually becomes very important for a lot of the other analysis, because, for example, when we talk about the law on protection of property of a third person, right? Like, there is law for that, right? Like, we talked about it on my stream previously, but it's very like, there's a couple interesting qualifications here, right? So first, you do have to act like there's a lawful requirement, right? So like, the fact that he had a gun and was acting unlawfully probably would itself disqualify him from being able to claim that sort of an affirmative defense. But also, like, he was pretty far away from the premise after, like, when he shot, you know, some of the people, right? Especially the ones on the street. So I'm very much at a loss, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but where exactly was the property that he was protecting when all the events went down? Because I mean, like, for the second one, it seems like he was clearly far away because he was on the street, right? He was down, he was far away.
Yeah,
like
I think they're about 4 blocks apart. And sorry, I made a mistake. I said Minneapolis. I meant to say Kenosha.
Okay.
But so I got his lawyer's release statement. Thanks, Nine Tails. I'll put this in your chat. Hold on one sec. Is that the easiest way to send you something? I just put it in your YouTube chat. Okay.
Let's see.
I don't know if it'll... Oh, you made me a mod. Nice.
Yeah, totally.
By the power of Grayskull.
All right, let's take a look at this.
Yeah, let me just get to the point that's the funniest part, though.
Okay, Kyle, this is...
Okay, yeah, so at the very start, right? Later in that day, they received information about a call for help from a local business owner. Like, who the fuck is a local business owner phoning high school kids across state lines? That makes no sense to me, but sure, awesome. Like, you know,
yeah.
Whose downtown Kenosha auto dealership was largely destroyed by mob violence. The business owner needed help to protect what he thought was his life's work, including 2 nearby mechanic shops. That's the correlation between the two. Kyle and a friend armed themselves with rifles due to deadly violence gripping Kenosha and many other cities, and they were headed to the business premises. The weapons were in Wisconsin, so they never crossed state lines. I mean, there's no more details given in this official release statement so far.
Okay. I mean, again, unless I'm missing something, I don't really see how that necessarily applies here. Now, it really depends on where the police mechanics. Here, hold on. Let me just go ahead and let me pull up the law real quick, just so that we're not, you know, completely speculating.
She's grabbing the law, everybody. She's about to open the law. You see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I already did a lot of the research. So, you know, we might as well not be, you know, just flying blind here. All right. Let's see. So, God, this was like a 28-page. I feel like such a boomer. I fucking use PowerPoints for my presentations. What the fuck am I?
You sound like a law student.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, no, that's true. All right, defense of property. Okay, let's see. So, defense of property and protection against retail theft. Right? So, a person is privileged to defend a third person's property from real or apparent unlawful interference by another under the same conditions and by the same means as those under and by which the person is privileged to defend his or her own property from real or apparent unlawful interference, provided that the person reasonably believes that the facts are such as would give the third person the privilege to defend his or her own property, that his or her own intervention is necessary for the protection of the third person's property, and that the third person whose property the person protecting is a member of his or her immediate family or household, or a person whose property the legal person has a legal duty to protect, or is a merchant, or the actor is a merchant's employee or agent. That's probably what they'll try to get under. An official, an adult, or agent of a library. All right, that doesn't really apply here. And the section unlawful means either tortious or expressly prohibited by criminal law or both. So here, like, the real big question, and the thing that I think that kind of sinks this argument, is going to be the question of whether or not specifically that his or her intervention is necessary for the protection of the third person's property. Like, that's going to be a stretch, right? Because, I mean, like, just by looking at the footage, we can see how far removed Kyle ends up becoming by the time he ends up shooting the 2 people at the end. And even because I don't know if the initial parking lot is going to be claimed to be one of those protected premises based on what you've shown me. But even if they did, like, based on the police footage, I think it's going to be hard to really make that sell that he had, like, it was necessary, right? It's not just like it was reasonable. Necessary is such a higher bar, right? That it was absolutely necessary to take the other person's life, right? Like, that's going to be a really, really hard sell, just based on like a plain, just based on a plain reading.
So when they present evidence and everything, will they have to prove, like, will he get the owner of the shop on the phone? Will they give a testimony? Will he have to be like, well, I called those boys, those high school kids, and I asked them to come protect my shop. I knew they were, you know, militia members, or is the idea, could it be that they called the militia itself? Because that would make, at least that to me has some plausibility, right? Because I know he was part of, or at least an ancillary member to some militia group or something of that nature.
So this goes to, like, again, like, how courts determine what a fact is, which is, again, like, to some degree legal fiction. Because what will probably happen is either like first they'll probably take take this person's official statement in the form of not a stipulation, an affidavit, right? So they'll do a deposition where, they'll sit down with that witness. Both parties' lawyers will ask them questions, or have an opportunity to ask them sort of like preliminary questions to figure out like exactly what their story is. The side representing Kyle Rittenhouse will obviously ask questions that will push the narrative that they want. And hopefully the prosecuting attorney whoever the prosecuting attorneys are will ask questions which go to undermine the person's credibility. Because in order to, like, you can't just like call someone a liar outright in the court, like when you're cross-examining someone, right? But like cross-examination is usually the way that either that like the stories or what is being introduced as alleged fact to a jury by a witness is discredited. And in this case, what the prosecutor would have to do would be to either prove through cross-examining them that some part of their testimony is false, or they would have to impeach them, which is basically to catch them in a lie. It's where you ask them a question during cross and trial, and they say something that's contradictory to something they had said at any point prior in any other instance. And then you say, Your Honor, I would like to approach with this piece of evidence, showing them saying something else from this prior instance. And the judge would give you permission. You would go up and you'd give the jury a copy. You'd make a whole big deal about it. And then you wouldn't say that they're a liar, but you'd basically say, so let's be clear, you just said X, right? And they would say yes. And then you'd be like, okay, can you read along silently from this as I read aloud? And then you read aloud the thing that directly contradicts the thing that they had just said. And you say, did I read that right? They say yes. And you say, so you said this completely different thing on this prior occasion. And they're like, yeah, I guess I'm a dumbass. And then you sit down because everyone in the room realizes that person's either an idiot or a liar. Right.
And do you get a +1 as a lawyer at that very moment? Do you feel it?
Yes, you do. You level up. You become
nice.
You become
that's dope.
Yeah, you become a better lawyer. Yeah.
Well, my other question would be then, if for whatever, let's just, this might be spurious, but say they were making this up, and say the owner of the shop hadn't called 2 high school boys across the state line, or just hadn't called anyone at all, and they were trying to pass that off as the story, would they then, like, would a person, if I wasn't involved in this, or I didn't want to be involved with this, would I risk, like, I assume that's endangering a child to say, hey, you underage kids, can you come with guns to protect my gas station?
I mean, again, I don't know the specifics of Wisconsin law, so here I'll talk morally, but yeah, probably. If you're asking kids to come with guns to come and do something unlawful for you. Actually, hold on. Wait. Now that I'm just thinking about this off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I don't know. There could be another claim of like solicitation, right? Where you're soliciting other people to commit a crime, since you're asking specifically people who are underage to come and commit a Class A misdemeanor, right? Like it's possible. But I would have to do.
Well, I mean, the argument I think putting forth is that he didn't ask them to commit a crime. He just said, "Can you come help protect my store?" Not
right.
And
yeah. So I mean, like, I guess that if you were to take it that way, then it would kind of put the onus back onto Kyle or whoever it was that provided him with that firearm. Because if the store owner just said, hey, come protect my property, that doesn't mean that Kyle had to come and bring a firearm. That meant he could have just shown up in his own person without a firearm.
Someone's asking if it's an open Facebook post or event. So if someone posted on Facebook, which could be what it turns out to be, please come help me. Would that be still solicitation?
Hold on. Let me look at my outline for criminal law.
Oh, she's referring to the law again, everybody.
Just out of curiosity.
I appreciate all this, by the way.
Yeah, no problem.
Especially you being fastidious in this regard.
Yeah. So I'm just all right. So basically, again, I'm just gonna read. So basically, this goes to the idea of a complicity crime, right? And I'm just going to read you, again, I'm not going to interpret it for you because this is something which I'm not familiar with, but basically, like, the common law elements of complicity are 1, an act of support, aid, assistance, or encouragement, which may include counseling or commanding. That's the action, right? And 2, the crime of another, right? Now, how does the crime of another element factor into complicity crimes as a prosecutor's burden? Well, prosecutors charging complicity must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that, in fact, the principal, the person who committed the crime that is being alleged that the other person was complicit in. The principal in the first degree committed the target offense, and secondly, that the crime of another is not a result element. This goes to like the really fine elements of criminal law analysis. But prosecutors need not prove any actual causal connection between the accomplice's support or encouragement in the crime perpetrated by the principal in the first degree. Nevertheless, some jurisdictions require a nexus of some kind. But all that word soup is basically to say that, like, there is, I mean, based on just like the academic literature, like some possibility that like if someone provided aid or encouragement to another person to commit a crime, that, it's possible they could face liability. I don't know whether or not they will charge. Like whether or not the I think it's Wisconsin DA would charge based on that. But I mean, like based on the common law, it's possible. It depends a lot on what is the specific Wisconsin law, or like what the specific interpretation of common law is in Wisconsin. Like I discussed, just for people who are watching, like I discussed a little bit how there's a distinction between common law and like incorporated state law. Common law is basically like if you were to take a survey of the broad consensus of law in the entirety of the nation, what does it generally look like? But then, like, if you go from state to state, like the specific statutes that they have, some of them will have nuanced differences, right? Like the common law standard for murder is the unlawful killing of another with malice aforethought, right? Very simple, very clean. Well, I mean, malice aforethought is a term of art that can be a little wishy-washy, but like once you actually like start wrangling with it, it becomes a lot less scary.
But then it basically moves over to case law, is what you have to refer to at that point, right?
Either case law or statute. It depends on what's prevailing. Like usually you start with a statute. By and large, that's usually like what you will end up starting with when you're looking at, especially a criminal law. And then there will be cases which interpret it, usually from like the highest court in the state, either like a state Supreme Court or sometimes, if it's a really big deal, then like the Supreme Court, right? So let's see. Like for example, sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, while you're looking that up, I also wanted to ask, is there an element of perhaps would the mother be in trouble in any of this, seeing as he's a minor?
I had not looked as much into it, so I don't want to say too much. Again, like I want to make very clear to people that like I'm just acting in the capacity where I'm representing people for purely educational purposes, things that I have already learned in the course of my education and the work I've already done. So I don't want to do too much like research into areas that I don't, that I can't really claim that sort of a qualification for.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah. Like I
more and more streamers should adopt that philosophy as a whole. I would say, like, just to be like, yeah, it's I have no shame in saying I don't know. Like,
yeah.
And I don't feel comfortable telling you as an authority on the subject about whether or not I don't know that.
Right.
It's great.
I mean, I also have like another consideration because like I'm going to be taking the bar in a couple of years, and I have no idea how this YouTube thing will make that go over. I've done research and I've seen how other people have done similar things, so I think I should be fine. But I'm essentially just being extra precautious because I don't want to make myself out to be an expert in any way on anything that I have not learned about, right? And even to the things that I have learned about, I want to give like a lot of disclaimers so that people are aware of exactly what I'm able to convey. So yeah, I mean, like, but yeah, no, I do agree with that. It would probably be a much healthier world if people didn't try to have an opinion on every single little thing, even if they don't really know that much about it at the onset, right? Like, oh god, I remember Vosh's whole Black nationalism arc, right? Like literally, I feel like
or the indigenous one.
yeah, or the indigenous one. Like literally, the entirety of those things, like those issues, could have just been avoided completely if he just said, "I don't know, I'll have to learn more about it," and boom, that's literally it. That the entirety of that would have just been settled, right? So yeah, I do both as a as a legal logistical matter and also just as a prudential matter try to only talk about things which I feel a decent degree of certainty on that I can communicate effectively.
And hey, I do want to also I do want to give him credit as well. He was quite good in both situations, especially when it came to the Black nationalism one, where I was like, just talk to Andre offline. I'm sure like you'll realize he doesn't mean it in the same way you think he does. And then with the indigenous one, he went back, he learned a ton, and then he came back. He was like, okay, here's the way I should see it. And I was like, oh, that was really base take. It was a really good. Really, like, I wish more streamers, and I say this as someone who apologizes constantly. Maybe it's because I'm a Canadian, or because I always like take videos down or tweets down, or like I think people should be okay with being like, I was wrong, and here's why I was wrong, and like are we all just imperfect? Are we all the Pope? Like, are we all just going to come forward and like you're doing a way better job of most because you're like, well, actually, everyone, I want to be kind of reserved in the way I'm going to discuss this, and just base it on what I already know. I was like, okay, well, yeah, that sounds very reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
and I get that. I will say that like it is hard, right? Like even like I acknowledge that at some level when like there, you know, this is something that I'm experiencing a lot more nowadays. But obviously, you know, everyone gets like hateful comments, right? And everyone gets comments, especially like political commentators, like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You're completely fucking wrong in your analysis. You're a completely fucking full of yourself,
Yep.
piece of shit, asshole." You know, something to that extent, right? And you know, some that does hurt because like I do genuinely like try to take criticisms, you know, sincerely and reconsider if I said something that's wrong. But at the same time, in order to do that, you kind of I don't know. That's something that I struggle with because, at some degree, like I either want to phase out people. Like on one hand, I want to block or phase out people who are just acting in bad faith, who just really don't care about whether I'm right or wrong, just want to hurt me. Because like there are plenty of people on that. I mean,
the internet, you mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, literally the entirety of the internet, except for the good people. The good people are good,
exactly.
but the vast majority, yeah.
But the good ones are here right now. Otherwise, like in both our chats.
Yeah, I know, right?
Otherwise, the internet's a cruel and strange place.
It's true. That's actually nothing truer has ever been said.
Okay, Riley. Then how about this? How about I take your lawyer hat off for a wee bit, and we put on your moralist hat, your philosophy hat.
Okay.
Because that way it can be outside of the purview of the classes and everything, right?
Yeah. No, that's totally fine.
Then my question to you would be you said in your video that you do not think that he was morally justified in the killings of those people. Can you give like a Cole's notes to everyone as to the reason why?
Yeah. So essentially, like there is some relation to the legal argument in that, like, I do think that the fact that he was acting for the entirety of the time that he was there in an unlawful manner, at least in that regard, shows a degree of, I suppose what you would call it, conscious assumption of the risk, where it does, like, I don't want to necessarily derive my morality from the law. I mean, as a larger policy, like, I think that this would have been a very interesting and different question if he had been 18. But the fact that he was underage, I think, at least for me, changes the analysis because it shows that, like, especially if he was, and I'm inclined to believe that he was aware of that law, especially since he was a former police cadet. And he had tried to join the police force, right? I would expect that he would have at least some degree of competency in that regard. And given that fact, right, that it seems very likely he would have consciously disregarded the law, even where the law is essentially, like, it's similar in some ways to, like, a seatbelt law, right? Like, on a policy matter. It's a law which exists to try and minimize harm to other people. And so when you consciously disregard a law which is aimed at minimalizing harm to other people, then it seems like to me that morally you sort of assume the risk of causing that type of harm to be incurred onto other people, which is a complicated way of saying, like, if he, like, since it seems very likely that he consciously disregarded the law, that he sort of assumed the risk that he could have possibly used that weapon that he had illegally in a dangerous manner, and namely could have either caused a grievous bodily injury to someone or killed them, right? Does that make sense? I'm trying to,
it makes total sense. For me, it was kind of like, it was cut and dry in the sense that, like, I don't think you're innocent if you're traveling to an area that you know to be one in conflict with a weapon that you're going to brandish for the purpose of defending a stranger's property. Like, I think my problem with a lot of these things is people try to apply blanket statements to them, as in, like, this is what should be moral and just in all scenarios. And I was like, it seems very specific to me because, like, if you want to say, like, okay, maybe he would have been more justified if that was his parents' store, and maybe he would have been even more justified if people were attacking the actual store itself. Maybe he would have been even more justified if they were attacking his mother who was in the store, right? Like, each one of those, I'm like, yes, you're justifying this more and more. But in this case, it seems so extreme in the opposite direction. It seems like we've gone so far beyond the pale, where it's like you're traveling to other areas to protect them for strangers in what you see as, I'll be honest, an ideological battle, right? This seems to be that there was some element of going to join what he sees to be. It doesn't need to be a race war. I don't need to pull the, like, he's like a white nationalist or anything, but definitely, like, the idea of, I as a cop have to protect order and law and property, like the property from anarchy kind of idea.
Yeah. No, and I see that argument, right? I suppose that where I would come down on that is that I'm not sure if that's something that we would want to maintain in every circumstance, right? Like, let's say that we change the hypothetical around to where, you have a home of a couple like black people, and there's a mob of KKK people coming at that person's house with guns and torches and whatnot. They're looking to lynch them.
Sure.
I'm not sure if if people are necessarily morally in the wrong for gathering up their own weapons and whatnot and going to that house and defending and helping to defend that house and the people against the other parties, right? Now, I mean, like, you could draw a distinction probably between those two instances, but I think that basically captures the idea that, like, I don't think that we should necessarily prohibit other people from being able to help those who they may otherwise associate with, right? So that's basically like
Is that represented under the law? Is there something for if you take the race card out of it, like a community policing, like, can I defend my community versus another community?
well, I mean, like, there is the law that we talked about earlier. Like, there's a defense of the third person's property, and that's probably the closest thing that you're going to find, right?
But in that case, don't you still need to at least know that person, or it can just be anyone? Can I go to a stranger's house and defend it?
Okay. So are we shifting a little way? Because, like, the way that I'm approaching this circumstance is under the assumption that Kyle was in fact recruited to go over, and that was the reason he was there. I think that that's a different circumstance from where someone just kind of shows up and is like getting ready to shoot. I don't know, like, there certainly are a lot of instances recently where you have, like, basically I don't know what you want to call them. They'll call themselves militia. Other people will call them, like, I don't know, what's like the worst term that people could call like, you've seen pictures of them online, people who show up to these protests with, like, fully armed rifles.
The Proud Boys, the Proud Boys, any of the white nationalist organizations, ethno-nationalist organizations, right-wingers, fascists, Nazis,
yeah, there you go. All of that, right? There are plenty of them who show up at other events, and I think that, like, again, in the moral sense, like, they're probably just going to want to, for looking for opportunities to shoot black people, right? Like, that's probably the pretty easy moral argument there, right? If they're going to a protest, which is specifically aimed at the advancement of the rights of people of color, and there's sort of this pretense that there might maybe be a possibility of, violence or rioting breaking out, then, and that's what sort of invites them to go and defend a third person's property, even though they don't know that third person, they have no relationship with that third person, they otherwise don't ever associate with that third person. I think that there's probably a pretty decent inductive line of reasoning that would lead someone to conclude that, yeah, they probably are just looking to shoot some black people. I don't think that that's unreasonable.
But did you make that leap in any of this? Because I know a lot of the other discussion was about whether or not he could be plausibly seen as having any kind of ideological, I don't even want to know,
like, ideological bias, or what do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, okay, first off, the Blue Lives Matter movement to me is a little further right than the All Lives Matter movement. All Lives Matter is a right-wing response to Black Lives Matter, and it's just their way of basically making it about them once again. And then Blue Lives Matter takes that one step further. And then if you actually check out the Blue Lives Matter official website and some of the creeds, it is quite there is an element of racism to it. Okay, it pulls it a little bit further, but it's not necessarily like going to be as black and white as being like, we're here to police the N-words or something like that, right? It is more about upholding society's values and stuff of that nature. So I don't necessarily say Blue Lives Matter means he is now a white nationalist, right? To me, it looks more to be like he is a MAGA Trump supporter, which does, again, like, there's a lot of overlap here between MAGA Trump supporters and what I would consider right-wing or far-right ideology. I don't know. Is any of that a leap to make in your mind?
I think it definitely
opinion?
in my non-legal, just to make life easier, until we say otherwise, we'll keep everything in the moral framework. So unless we say explicitly, just everyone watching can assume that we're just talking morally, right? So here, right, I think that definitely, like, contributes. Like, it's not an irrelevant fact, right? Like, the fact that he is very openly in support of Blue Lives Matter, the fact that he was a former police cadet, which also kind of it's also something which may explain the fact that he was so familiar with a lot of the police officers, the fact that one of them gave him a bottle of water, the fact that when he was literally, after he had already shot the other people and walking towards the police, that they didn't even stop him, even though he had a firearm, even though other people were saying that he was a murderer and that he shot
telling.
people. Yeah.
I know.
Like there's oh yeah, no. So
and he was talking to the police beforehand. They were all like buddy, and he's like, okay, well, yeah, you can patrol this area, you can patrol that area. Like, what the hell? I mean,
oh yeah, no. There's definitely there. I don't think that's irrelevant for consideration, right? That I think that definitely demonstrates, at least to some degree, like some familiarity or alignment with police officers in these efforts, right? So I don't think that that's necessarily immaterial. When we're considering here, like, so I guess that the question is like, does that factor into whether or not he was justified in being there, since that may have been like some part of his motivation, right? It's certainly possible. This is one of those circumstances where there's like a lot of different factors, because like on one hand, if he was legitimately called there to be a medic, which is something I know that he's claiming, right, or that he's claimed in videos. If he was called there to defend someone's property, which is a consistent story, that's that's what he said in the video recordings, and that's what seems to be maintained. Absolutely. Like that's consistent.
I think he genuinely believes that, to be honest. I think like I'm saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be as black and white as him pointing towards black people and calling them the N-word. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he might be trying to uphold some ideological framework that could encompass, racist ideology, could pour over into the MAGA fascism as well.
Yeah. And I tend to agree with that, right? It's and all right, I don't know, this is a small tangent, but it relates to this, right? Because before I came to, because right now I'm living in Maryland, I'm living in Baltimore, hooray. Which is actually, I won't talk too much about that, but it's certainly better than where I was before, because for the longest time, for the past 5 years, I lived in the South, in either for the vast majority of the time in Memphis, Tennessee, and then a little bit in Arkansas, then a little bit in Florida, small time in Ohio before I came out here and started my legal education. And a lot of the people in the South, and people might push back against this, but it's a complicated discussion, because a lot of the people, especially people who I knew, because for the longest time, and this is a little bit of Riley lore, back when I was presenting as a cishet, straight, all that guy, I actually dated a woman from a Southern Baptist community, right? And that was a very interesting experience for me, because obviously, like, coming from the North, I had a very negative perception of a lot of people from down there. But it was interesting because on one hand, a lot of them did have the beliefs that, people would stereotypically make them out to be, right? We got into a lot of arguments about like LGBT rights. Like everyone knew that I was very openly pro LGBT, very left leaning, all that, right? But at the same time, they were also some of the nicest people that I had known. Now that probably their treatment of me has substantively changed since I have come out. There's a reason that one of many reasons I'm no longer in the South, right? Being trans down there is not a great play. If you want to have like,
sorry, you had to go through all that. That sounds
it's
a really, really intense lived experience.
Yeah, no, it was a thing. But I've talked about it enough that anyway. So the thing about it, right, is that a lot of these people, especially like with the way that they think about these sort of issues, like it's not as if they're coming into the situation thinking, oh yeah, I just want to murder these black people, right? But it's sort of like when you follow the line of logic down to its conclusion, they genuinely do think that police uphold like the norms and order in society, right? But then like they also, in order to maintain that view, have to justify reasons why they disproportionately kill black people and people of color, right? And so it's not so much that they start with the position that black people deserve to be shot, but usually they start with the position that the police do no wrong. And so when they kill black people, well, it's not the police's fault. So
yes, it's the black people.
Yeah, exactly. And that's usually
1350. Basically, they commit all the crimes.
Yeah. No, it is 1350, and that's actually like a really good synopsis of like how a lot of these people think, right? Because it's a way of arguing. Listen, I don't hate black people. They just caused
Yeah.
this themselves. The police are just doing their job. The police can't do any wrong. But it's the fact that they start with the premise that the police can do no wrong, right? And so I don't think that he necessarily went into there with the impression that, like, listen, I'm just going to go in and kill some black people. But he did go in with the impression, and I think it's pretty easy to see, right, that the police could do no wrong, and especially given his close association with them, right? The fact that he knew them, the fact that he was a former police cadet, the fact that they gave him water, right? The fact that they fucking let him go after he murdered several people. Again, no legal conclusion there,
And
but
cross state lines.
Yeah,
So he
exactly.
could turn himself in his own police station.
Yep,
I was
yep.
like,
oh yeah,
it's gotta be the most privileged thing ever. Right away, he was like, I shot some people, like, get on through, we gotta go arrest those black people. What, the dead ones?
Mhm.
Like, okay. All right. Well,
But
Yeah.
the moral argument aside, even just for a second, I do think that this is probably one of the most pivotal sort of instances, especially like in terms of like the Black Lives Matter movement, just in terms of like the police reception of both him and Jacob Blake. Right? You on one hand you have someone who, after being tased, calmly gets up, walks around his car, reaches in for an indeterminate reason, and that's cause for police officers to unload into his back 7 times with a handgun. And then comparatively, you have someone who actually killed several people and who police just let go on by and ended up going back to his home state, right? You have a very apparent distinction in how people are treated, and there is a pretty clear distinction that a big fact, like it's pretty apparent when you just look at it, that a large factor for that is race, you know. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was taking that. But I suppose that so when we're thinking about like Kyle's mentality, like taking it back into the earlier conversation, right? Was he going expecting a fight? I mean, probably, but not necessarily in the way that I think a lot of people are thinking about it. He probably thought about it more in the way that, like, I don't know, like a lot of, one example I actually remember, one way of framing I heard that I thought really fit. Like, it's probably the kid who plays like too much Call of Duty and gets gets enamored with like that aesthetic of like going and dying for your country, and if there's one way to die righteously, it's to die defending the people that you care about, right? And so he probably didn't go in with the mentality of I'm just gonna murder some black people, but he probably did go in with the mentality of, if I'm going to die, it might as well be here defending my country against the tyrannical uppity, you know, so and so. You can finish the rest of the sentence. He probably didn't think that far, but if he would have followed it to its logical conclusion, then, you know, that's probably where he would have ended up. That's why a lot of these people, that's why I feel like for a lot of people from these sort of demographics, it's very easy to get radicalized further to the right, because usually the thing that keeps them from doing that is just like following their premises to their logical conclusion. Like, most people don't consciously think about, well, why do the police disproportionately kill a large number of black people, right? Like, most people
they commit all the crimes.
Yeah, exactly. But like, even then, like, most people who support the police just don't really think about it too much. It's one of those things where it's just kind of like, it's probably just a fact of life, right? That a lot of people think about and then just kind of brush off, because most people are just going about living their day-to-day lives. But then when someone actually begins like applying some pressure to that, you basically have one of two conclusions to come to. You can either come to the conclusion that the police are doing something wrong, or the black people are doing something wrong. And if you're already taken as a given that the black people can, or that the police can do no wrong, well, you're kind of left with one option.
I was having a debate with Actual Justice Warrior like a month ago, and I was picking him on that, and I was like, well, if you don't think it's intrinsic, if you don't think it's something in the DNA, what do you blame it on? He's like, well, it's the culture. I was like, what? He's like, well, you know, the culture of black people, black dads, they don't stay in the household, so that's it. It's the bad family dynamic. I was like, well, do you think maybe they don't have a lot of black fathers in the household because they're being disproportionately arrested, and or, you know, things to do with, you know, economic disparity, stuff like that. And then he dropped the one I'd never heard before. He's like, I was like, it's got to be something more. Push it on me. He's like, it's because they don't use condoms. I was like, what?
Wait.
He's like, yeah, black men disproportionately don't use condoms, and that's why there's so many fatherless mothers and families. I was like, oh, well, that one's new. I haven't heard this one yet, but
that is a new argument. So what I'll say here is that I'm really glad that there are other people to sort of make these arguments, because like I do anticipate that I'm going to be doing more research in the future about like race issues, and so I can be able to participate in these sort of discussions more affirmatively, right? But I mean, like, I know just from watching you and similar people like Vosh and like a lot of the other people who sort of do debate content, right? That's kind of just horseshit, and that a lot of like there is a problem. God, actually, hold on. Do I have a book on this? I know that God, this is I'll have to do a bit later. I'll have to do more research and do more reading on this. But my advisor in undergrad actually specifically did a lot of his life's work. A lot of his expertise was focused on urban development and urban education, and it focused on the idea, right, that when you have especially an education system, and you're looking at why there are certain groups of people who fail disproportionately more or don't do as well as other groups of people. Well, a big part of it is like, the quality of life at home, right? Whether or not you have someone who comes from a single parent household, whether or not they're, getting an adequate amount of exposure to like decent educative content at home. Now that to that extent relates back possibly to actual Justice Warrior's argument. But the problem is that like, it's a cycle that ends up perpetuating itself, right? Because what you have is you have people who end up going through public education who don't have as much support from home, so they end up doing very poor in education. They usually end up dropping out of high school disproportionately. I can tell you that when I was working as a program director in the South, the vast majority of people who came to us who are people of color actually didn't even have a high school degree. Most of them had dropped out at that point. And then once you drop out of high school, it is so much harder to be able to succeed in life, right? One of the major things that we tried to provide was I think it's GED classes, where you're able to take a class after you've dropped out of high school to be able to get your high school diploma, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, but like that's a major problem. So like it begins with they don't get enough support from home, so they end up going to school and they don't do as well in school. They drop out of school, and then they usually will get roped up into any of a number of issues, whether it's drugs, gangs, any of which could end them up in jail. And like once you've been in jail once, that is a system that will chew you up for the rest of your life, right? Like once you've been in jail, especially if you come from a position of poverty, you're basically fucked, right? And that's the unfortunate reality of the criminal justice system.
Can't get hired, can't even vote.
Yeah, can't even vote, right? Yeah. No, you are screwed. You are screwed the pooch, right? And like this is basically when you take this into account, right? It is pretty clearly a system of oppression, right? Because then what you're going to have is when someone is at the end of this process, well, then if they have a kid, well, the kid is going to be put into the same kind of circumstances that ended up genesising that person to begin with, right? Namely, like very poor socioeconomic and cultural background, or a background where they, it just ends up making it very hard for the children to be able to succeed in life, right? It ends up starting them off very bad or very far behind the 8 ball. Now, some people will respond to that argument and say, well, listen, like I know I've heard this argument from like Black conservatives. Well, it's like, well, listen, I started from a bad background and I started from, a position of poverty, but I just worked hard. People don't work hard enough. Well, that's on them. That anyone can get out of poverty, right? And it's like, yes, anyone can get out of poverty, but the fact is, like, it's not that it's impossible for you to get out of poverty for coming from those sort of backgrounds, but it's the fact that it's disproportionately harder for you to be able to get out of those circumstances because of your background, right? And that's the thing that makes it a broken system, right? Or an oppressive system, right? It's not necessarily that's impossible for you to get there, because clearly there are people who are able to beat the odds, right? Like, congratulations, that's a part of the human condition. Anyone can do it. I mean, like, in a lot of ways, actually, like, I'll talk about that. I have an example in my head, but I'll talk about it in a second. But like, what we're really talking about in that sort of an instance is survival bias, right? Or survivorship bias. And otherwise, there's not really a lot of argument against it. Like the evidence, at least from what I'm aware of, is pretty consistent on that matter. I don't know what this relates necessarily to discussion on Kyle Rittenhouse, but no, I definitely, like the argument the actual Justice Warrior related to you. I mean, in that regard, just kind of sounds absurd to me.
I think to everyone.
But that's the long abridged way of sort of articulating why I think that, right? I don't like just totally saying, oh, someone's opinion is outrageous and not commenting on it more. No, sorry.
You have so much more due diligence. Riley, I've got to shut it down for the day. I've been streaming for like 4.5 hours.
Oh, you're completely fine. We're a little bit over an hour, and I have an uncomfortable amount of work I have to do tonight because the semester is starting up, and I have a clinic and also four doctrinal classes, which is it's a lot. My mental health, I don't know. I'll talk to a therapist. And everything will be fine, right? Like that's all you have to do. You pay a therapist and you sit down with them, and then they get rid of your mental issues, right? That's how it works out. They get rid of your trauma.
They give you brain happiness.
Yeah,
it's an exchange. It's money for brain happiness.
Exactly. That's how that goes over.
I hope you're taking care of yourself, because I deeply admire your work. I think you're doing some really great stuff, and I think, like, honestly, you have a ridiculous future in this scene, to say the very least. Like, you're charismatic, you're talented, but the other thing is that, like, you are actually putting in the time, which is not a lot of people on the left are doing that, in terms of, like, here's all the facts, the figures, the stats, the analysis. That stuff is awesome. So please keep doing what you're doing. It's yeah. I don't want to say drop out of law school, because that would be ridiculous.
right. Oh yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm definitely, like, this is I mean, like, as far as the things that have prepared me to be able to talk a lot, I mean, like, obviously I've carried over a lot of skills I developed over the course of my life, right? As far as, like, being able to do research, being able to talk, public speaking. Like, let me be clear, not, like, if you, I don't want to give people a false impression. If you go to law school, that's not automatically going to make you into, like, a person with decent rhetorical skills, right? A lot of those I developed beforehand. In fact, it's pretty shitty, because, like, law school actually probably does very little to help with that, even though it's like such an important skill in, like, the legal world, unless you're doing something like corporate law. But even then, it's very important, right? But yeah, like, I don't know, I really like being able to pursue this education, because this will be the last comment, actually, because this is something I think about. There's something in the law called the legality principle, which is basically this idea in criminal law that you should not be able to punish someone for violating a law that they did not know about, right? This usually comes up in application in, like, very extreme circumstances nowadays. Like, for example, there was a case where a woman, I believe, moved to LA, and she wasn't aware that there was a law there that if you had a prior criminal record, that you had to register with a local city official. And she had a prior criminal record, right? But she didn't know about it, because this is a pretty weird kind of law to have. Not a lot of cities have it, or at least had it at the time that the case was decided. And so, they brought charges, and she took it to trial and basically made the argument, listen, Your Honor, you can't expect me to know this law, right? Like, this is so out there, no reasonable person would have known it. And they actually found for her, saying, like, listen, yeah, no one could have possibly been expected to know this law. But I always think about that, because, like, on principle, the reason why people go to law school is because it's so hard to know what the law is with the way it is nowadays, right? Like, and in order to be able to understand what the law is, most people have to go out of their way to, like, hire a lawyer, which is, again, why we do this, right? And so, I do like, as a principle, just being able to spread some of the things I learn about, because, if we're going to follow that principle, if we're going to follow that standard that everyone in society knows what the law is, then we shouldn't try to gatekeep it as much as we do, at least in my opinion. But then lawyers wouldn't be paid as much, which is probably the main reason at the end of the day. Like, if you dig down to the bottom, that's probably the main reason why legal education is gatekept as much as it is, because it means that they can charge a lot for you. Yeah, so,
and you all have to pass the bar too, right?
Oh yeah, no, there will be a period of a couple months in a couple years from now where I'll probably just fall off the face of the internet for a while as I stress out over studying and taking the most terrifying exam probably in my life. But yeah, so no, that will come at some point in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to plug your stuff? There's still like 500 people watching.
Oh, fuck. Hey, everyone. How's it going? Yeah, my name is Riley Grace Rochong. You can find my YouTube and Twitch and whatnot if you just Google my name. Follow me at Riley G. Rochong on Twitter. And join my Discord, because actually, honestly, that's the coolest thing I enjoy. Everyone in my Discord is watching right now through my chat. Thank you all for being here. I know that this was sort of like a last minute thing, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I think that's it. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate coming on here.
No, thank you. I was the one picking your brain, not the other way around. But no, thank you so much, Riley. You're awesome.
Yeah, no problem. You too. All right, I'll talk to you later, all right? Vaporwave Riley. What is this? Why is this? I don't know why. I mean, like, I was able to be on his stream, so that's all good. But why? I'm gonna mess around with it, and I mean, like, worst case scenario, it doesn't go away. Hopefully it does, but like, I mean, it kind of sucks because you can't see it, but there's like translating back there. There's like blue over there and pink over there. And I mean, the pink is still here, but it is what it is. Socrates, tell us why. Let's see. All right. Before I log off, the Discord is pretty cool. Yeah, I appreciate it. Imagine being illiterate. Let's see. Whom says better, Riley or Vaporwave Riley? Oh shit, Vaporwave Riley won. Oh wow, I didn't realize it. I feel like it happened after you messed with. Yeah, it did. I don't know what happened there. It was when Discord was trying to register. Oh my god. Wow, that's 3 people. I'm not even paying attention. But yeah, it was like when I tried to do the thing with the call, right? Where I had tried to use this camera. Oh my god, thank you so much. I'm gonna listen, if people want to subscribe or do other stuff, I'll wait for a little bit. Just because I don't know, hearing the sounds makes me happy. Oh my god. Also, I'm just gonna say it. People, I don't know why everyone is saying that like I'm gonna blow up or something. I really don't see it. And maybe that's just me being hypercritical, but I'm still at like 6K. All right, we're getting a lot of subs, so hooray for that. But like we're still at like 6K subscribers, you know? Like if I hit 10K in like a week or so, then yeah, I would say, okay, this is starting to become a thing, right? But like I don't know. We're just kind of doing our own thing. Like the stream and subscribe to Riley. Aw. Best mod. Riley underestimated. No, I definitely do. Listen, no, I'm just very critically honest and very critical of myself because honestly, I feel like a lot of people doing this can end up being sort of like a narcissist, and I'd rather not do that. I'd rather just be very real about myself with y'all. And also, I'm just like a very self-critical person. How many people are you going to respond to next stream? How many of the people you are going to respond to next stream are going to argue that criminal records of the victims have any meaning? Yeah, so that's going to be... I mean, like, with Kyle Rittenhouse, that won't mean shit, right? Because there's no way that he could have possibly known. With Jacob Blake, I still don't think it'll matter, but they will make the argument at trial, right? Like, I don't think that if the lawyers for Kyle try making that argument, I think that that's an immediate objection. You just object, objection. Like, it would be 401 relevance. Literally has no impact on the trial. Like, Kyle wasn't aware of it. He didn't know about it. It would have no bearing on his perception of whether or not it was necessary to use deadly force, right? With Jacob Blake, they will make the argument and there will be arguments had over it, but I still think that it's not relevant. They will try to argue that it is, since it goes into the police's perception of whether or not they needed to use deadly force, but I still don't think it's a great argument. Wait. People are making that argument about Kyle. Are you fucking serious? I will. That is so infuriating. Oh my god. I'm not even the goddamn lawyer, and I can. All right. Here's the secret, people, and I know this at least from doing mock trial for 4 years in undergrad and having to deal with actual attorneys and judges, like doing, judging for mock trial and giving criticism and feedback. Not every judge and not every attorney is actually good at their job. Believe it or not, there's actually a lot of really shitty ones out there who make really shitty arguments. It's like one of the main arguments. Are you serious? I will lose my actual shit about that. With Jacob, I can kind of see the argument. There's one to be made, but it's weak. But like with Kyle and the people that Kyle was interacting with, abso-fucking-lutely not. There's no way. Because he would have had to have been aware of it, because what matters is ultimately his perception, right? Hold on. I have to look at this now. Are you goddamn serious? Hold on. You weren't kidding. You actually weren't kidding. You're actually... None of this fucking matters! None of it! None of it! None of it. Alright? It's completely irrelevant. And also, by the way, here's the really hot take. Even if they did these things, they already went to prison. They've already served their sentence. These are not excuses to kill someone. We are in a country which predominantly has done away with the death sentence. Unless they are in a state which still has a death sentence, there's no reason why this could even be possibly a justification. Even if you were to assume that Kyle knew about this in the first place, there is literally no reason this is relevant. None. Makes me so angry. If their attorneys try to bring this up, that is terrible on their part. The argument, like the text, is not justified. Okay, but let's be clear. All right, let's be clear. Looking at Kyle's tendencies is the only, like, I only consider that for the moral argument. All right, I literally only consider that for the moral argument because it goes to why he was there. Unless the argument is literally that these people were there to like commit these crimes, then looking at their records is irrelevant for a moral argument. But for a legal argument, none of this fucking matters. And also, Kyle's criminal record also, for the most part, probably doesn't matter either. Again, that's why I made that distinction when I was talking about it with Lance, right? Like, that's why I don't love focusing on his past criminal, like on his tendencies and whatnot, because like, yeah, it makes for like good coverage and it makes for a spicy story. It probably won't matter so much in the court of law. Shane, in YouTube chat, says the Serfs love Riley. Aw, wait a second. I'm so happy. Yeah, no, I'm so glad to have all of you here. Yeah, it was really cool hearing from everyone. Manufacturing can set an example. But yeah. All right, I have some work to do tonight, so let me find like a good outro song for you all. I'm pretty good about... Oh, by the way, people start recommending me where I could send my Twitch. Because I'll send y'all somewhere decent. Let's see. What am I gonna use this time? Jelly stream? Hey, yeah, glad to have you. I'm sorry that this is a weird... Oh, hold on. All right, I found a good bopping song. All right. All right. Y'all have a good day. It was great doing this surprise stream. And yeah, I will talk to y'all later. Bye.
Pop it off, baby. I said, this one goes out to all the workers getting the pay down. Busting your ass 9 to 9, working out to the bone. It ain't easy, baby girl, got to figure it out. Oh. But in the meantime, baby, gonna scream and shout. Oh, oh yeah, you're essential. 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 You're essential, baby. Oh yeah, you're essential. I'm talking about the grocery store clerks, cashiers, nurses, doctors, nurses assistants, food delivery drivers, post office workers, bike delivery, train operators. You know who you are. You're getting the fuck out there and doing it. And god damn it, this time really, really sucks. But let me tell you something. You are the best thing about it. You get out there, you risk your ass so that idiots like me can order food and make this stupid bullshit. And for that, god damn it, baby. We love you. Ha!